Good. I want us to place our left hand onto below our belly button, right hand on top of our chest. Closing our eyes. Inhale into your tummy. Exhale towards your spine. Feel the rise of your tummy, your chest on the inhalation. And on the exhalation, you're breathing, and just imagine it out of your entire spine. Pulling the navel as close as possible. And breathing into the fullness and bringing the fullness into your body. Letting go of the moment that was just there before. Being present to the rhythm that keeps us alive. It's also the rhythm that keeps us moving. Experiencing. Last 3 deep breaths. Now after the third exhalation, you bring your right hand also down below your belly button. Tip of your thumbs are touching. And the tip of your index fingers, you place the palms fully against your tummy here. And now breathe again into your hands. Exhale towards the spine. Imagine you nourishing right now your reproductive organs. We had the last supermoon for this year. A lot of emotions were swirling around. And they have their home right in here where you have your hands. Take 3 more deep breaths. And let your hands slide either onto your knees or onto your thighs. Open your eyes just shortly, arch your spine forward. Exhale, round back. Inhale, exhale. Initiate the movement from the base of your spine, both directions. So the tailbone leads the way. You can close your eyes once you're comfortable. And your body is your temple. It's the temple that's housing the soul. Needs to be cleaned, needs to be cared for, needs to be respected and honored. And this is a simple movement, but not to be underestimated. I would do it every day. Just a little bit more. Then we want to arch forward. We hold our breath just for a moment. Exhale, come sitting straight. If you're sitting on the floor cross-legged, that's fine. Otherwise, if you sit on a chair or sofa, bring your knees wide apart. Rest your hands onto your knees. Inhale and twist your torso to the left. And then exhale, bring your forehead to one knee. Inhale, come up, twist, and exhale. If you don't reach your knee, that's fine. Yeah, you just go down as far as your back allows. You always want to do the spinal flex that we just did before you do this one, so that your spine is warmed up. One more time to each side. Then come back to center. Keep your hands resting around your knees. Sufi grind. Inhale, arch forward. Exhale, round back. Inhale. Exhale. Big rotations. Think of your kidneys and your adrenal glands and your reproductive organs when you breathe in here. Bring in ease and effortlessness, fluidity. We want to reverse the direction, same breath pattern. You inhale forward, exhale round back. Two more rotations. And then come to center, bring your feet, when you sit cross-legged on the floor, stay where you're at. Fingertips in front of your shoulders, thumb to the back. So the importance here is really that you keep your upper arm parallel to the floor. They are not dropping down. So you press against gravity. You inhale, and the twist comes from the base of your spine. So you really let one vertebra at a time. You twist, you look over your left shoulder on your inhalation. Exhale, right. Take your head with you. The tendency is always just to have the head going with us just to one side. We're just doing a little quick warm up for all our energy centers this morning. Right now we are in the third one, solar plexus. Then we come to center, bringing our arms forward. Exhale. Inhale, keep your spine erect. Exhale, just your arms moving, palms are not touching. Inhale, now focus on your heart center. On your lungs. You're really inviting the air element here into your body. Our heart needs air to breathe, so to speak. It's like a little tune up for our chakras this morning. 30 more seconds. Good, and inhale, bring your arms out to the side, suspend your breath just for a moment. Exhale and let go. Let the arms hang. If you sit cross-legged on the floor, rest your hands on your thighs, on your knees. Inhale, bring your shoulders up. Exhale, let them drop. Reach for your earlobes with your shoulders. This will work your throat chakra, which is associated with your shoulders, your neck. Inhale up, suspend your breath, hold it. Exhale, drop. Bring your arms forward, palms down. Bring your head just back as much as your neck allows you. And then I want you to have a gentle focus on your third eye as if you look through your third eye towards the ceiling. Long, deep breathing. And stimulate your pituitary gland, the master gland in your body, just by having a focus on it. Deep breath. While your arms are stretched out in front of you, parallel to the floor, palms facing down. So we also work right now on our thyroid gland, just by bringing our neck back, our head back, stretching through the neck. Good. Now gently bring your chin back to parallel. Interlace your finger. Last position for our chakras. Place your interlaced fingers on top of your crown and then lift them 4 to 6 inches above. Keep your eyes closed. Imagine you look up through your crown into your palms. Tip of your thumbs touch, pointing back just for a minute here. Elbows back, not forward. And be present to how you breathe from below and how you bring the energy all the way up to the crown. And then how the exhalation goes from the crown back down all the way to the first chakra. Hold in and let go. Now take a deep breath, suspend your breath, pull your perineum, sex organ, navel really in and squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. Hold it just for a moment. Bring your palms together overhead and then the back of your hands. And exhale, sweep through your auric field, your 8th chakra. Sweep out to the side. Rest your hands onto your thighs, palms facing upward. Take 3 deep breaths here. Inhale, nose, exhale, open mouth, please. And then we gently open our eyes. Nirmala, I just need a little bit time, like 3 minutes at the end for Aum chanting because of the moon.
Okay. We can do that. Hello, sweet ladies. I just want to get my arms around each of you. Just want to hug you. Okay, so I just came from the temple, directly from the temple, where I had been for several hours, and it reminded me so much of what I wanted to speak to today. So I want to say that the divine is everywhere. Everywhere includes the mundane. So therefore, the mundane is divine. So no matter what we are doing in our daily life, there is nothing that doesn't contain the divine, an element or elements of the divine. So there's nothing that's inconsequential or unimportant or small. There are no small tasks. Everything in our life is an opportunity to touch the divine in ourselves and in our surroundings and in other people. My teacher talks a lot about sacred spaces, and he says that that's our natural habitat, that the divinity in us and that our vitality is naturally sacred until we do otherwise with it. And as long as we sustain it. So the temple I serve in, needs to be maintained. We have to do certain processes every single day, or the divine feminine energy will diminish. That's not true in all temples. Certain types of temples have their own, they will sustain themselves with very little activity. Our divine one, our Devi, requires a lot of maintenance. And if we don't support that, the energy of the space will diminish. And so I think when we start to imagine being in sacred, consecrated spaces, Sadhguru says that our world should be constructed such that it's connecting or interconnected consecrated spaces and sacred spaces, like concentric circles around us that are sacred. So for instance, you would make sacred your home, and you would make sacred your workspace, and you would make sacred your garden and whatever earth space you had around you, and it would bump up against the next person that was doing the same thing. So when you left your house or your work or the grocery store, the grocery store, other people work there, they make that place sacred. You would basically walk from one sacred bubble into another. And that your daily walk through life would be this sacred journey that has an intentionality that had been set by those who either worked in or lived in or passed through those spaces. And that as our natural inclination, we would be in those spaces feeling quite vital and healthy and alive and connected to both other human beings and also to the earth, to the four-legged creatures, to all of those, that life that's around us. But by separating ourselves out and by not tending, Siddhi said in our warm-up about your body being the temple, that's our first place that we can work, is through our own body as a temple. When we treat and revere our body as something sacred, then we start to think about what foods we're taking in, what activities we're doing. There starts to be a different way that we see our body. If you hold it as sacred and consecrated, then you're going to take a different look at your body and you're going to care for it differently. So one of the things that we can do, aside from looking at our bodies, is to imagine what is our responsibility in our home space, our living space, our workspaces, and how do we set those up so that they have the same sort of sacred intention as we are having the same temple energy that we're putting into our body. We don't need to go to a temple to feel that. We should be able to have that in our daily life. We should have our surroundings that give us that same juicy feeling of something being in concert and in relationship with everything else, and feeling that that interwovenness, that interconnectedness that you can feel in a sacred space. You feel a connection with something in a different dimension. It's not just feeling yourself. You feel a fullness in a sacred, consecrated space. So I wanted to talk a little bit today about how we might incorporate altars. We talked about this a few weeks ago, and I said I would speak a bit more on it in our home space or your office space, or it could even be in your garden. I think Lishan has some really lovely a garden altar. There's so many different, any place that you spend time that you feel called to be in, whether it's indoors or outdoors, taking the intentionality of creating a space that you are aiming for it to feel sacred and consecrated. You don't need a pundit or a minister or a priest or a rabbi to come make something holy and sacred. You can do that. You can do that with your own intentions, and the way that you respect and revere a space will change the energy of that space, will change your relationship with that space. And once you start experiencing what it feels like to walk even in just your world, between your garden and your house and your office and your car and all of the places that you have control over as sacred, you will start feeling a different kind of co-relationship with your life and with the spaces that you're moving in. So I wanted to talk a little bit about our house, our home space, and how we might elevate that with the use of an altar to be able to take our intentions and take our health concerns and take our relationship concerns and anything that's going on in our life and be able to have a place to lay it, a place to put it on. An altar is a place that can hold many things that are going on in your life. It's not just about placing things that make you happy. It's about also asking for support. So how do we get support? By setting up something that's visual that we're in relationship with. Creating altars is a dynamic way to stimulate change in your life. If you're looking for impacting the ambiance of a space, you're looking at setting intentions that you want to hold in a reverent way. You want to have them in your mind space as much as possible. If you want to take a look at some health concern that you have of yours and you want to offer it, we're offering things up to the divine when we place them on an altar. We're asking for support outside of what we have complete control over. We're turning things over. We're surrendering. An altar represents the surrendering of our heart space, the opening of our heart space to not just those in our immediate family, but to everyone, and not just to individuals, but to the divine, however it's showing up in your life. Altars that are designed as replicas, miniature replicas of the universe, will have all 5 elements, and that brings a certain balance. I know we've talked about the Vastu way of bringing balance into your home, where you would try to incorporate the different elements in different corners. We want to have on our altar all of the different elements so that there's a fullness of the universe, the cosmos. What is the cosmos made of? We're just microcosms of the macrocosm. We want to have that represented on our altar. Altars are a way of us nurturing our devotion to holiness. And holiness with an H, like being holy and reverent to something that's beyond us, but also wholeness, W-H-O-L, the wholeness that we want to be, the integration of body, mind, spirit. And when Siddhi said our body is a temple, us integrating that our body is as important as our mind and as our spirit journey, that we're weaving those together in this lifetime. This is the balance we're looking for. So an altar can represent that in the way that we set it up. They say that altars are like it's like a radio, tuning a radio into a specific station, that when you start to place altars around your home and your office and the spaces that you move through, you become more receptive to the information that's coming to you, the truth and the wisdom that's coming to you, that's already out there. It's not that it's some new piece of information, but we're not always receptive to hearing. And you know, when you're on a roll and you're really intuitive and you're feeling things and you're sensing them and you're kind of one step ahead of what's happening, you're like, wow, how did I get in that zone? How did I get there? An altar is one way of promoting that sort of nurturing, that sort of connectedness to our intuitive nature, because we're weaving together the balance of ourselves with the balance of the cosmos. So one thing that I like to think about when I'm setting up an altar first is what space do I want it in? Where am I? Many people have a special room set aside where they might be doing their exercise, or they are doing some creative projects and they might want it there. When my kids were little, I had mine in the kitchen because that's where I spent all my time. So I figured it ought to be where I was. So I literally took a little part of the cupboard, the countertop, and I made it an altar. And the kids loved it. They would put things on it. They would go collect pine cones and things, and they put their own things on it and that taught them what it looked like and felt like to have an altar in the space. But I wanted it where I went, not in some removed room where I didn't go. I wanted it in my space. So what's the space or spaces that you want to be able to have an altar that you can have as a working altar, one that's changing and moving and adapting to what you need. It's not a decorative thing where you set it up all pretty and then you just leave it. This is something that's moving with you. So what's coming up for you in your life will be placed on the altar. You can use something as simple as a little side table in your bedroom. If you have a salt table, the countertop, you can even use the floor, setting up a beautiful piece of fabric on the floor, just taking care for animals, any four-legged creatures. That's not a good idea. And if you're using candles or lamps, just figuring out how to make sure that that's intact and sturdy. Unless it's a hardwood floor or something where it's really stable. But that's another way of just choosing the room. Just go around your space and say, where is it that I would be inspired to sit? It's really lovely to be able to sit in front of your altar and do a meditation or a prayer or an offering, or just sit for a few moments to see how it is that you're feeling about the things that are popping up in your life, the things that you might have offered. So one of the things that happens with an altar is that it gives you a deeper connection to whatever the spirit journey is that you're on. So if you're studying Buddhism or you're a Christian and you have, there's certain, maybe it's Mother Mary, whatever it happens to be, but the icons and the representative pieces that connect you to your spirit journey, the one that you're on, should be on your altar. Your teachers, photos of your teachers or your guides should be on your altar. Anything, if you're working with the divine feminine, anything honoring the moon is really beautiful to have on the altar. Anything that has to do with the earth. So when we look at the 5 elements and we talk about how to include them for balance, here are just some suggestions. So for air, which we call Vayu, it would be lovely to have like a small handheld fan, one of those really beautiful like antique fans that you would fan yourself with is a lovely thing. A feather is lovely to represent the air or the movement of air. How does air move? And feathers, the softness and graceful, and there's a gentleness about that. Water, jala, that's, you would obviously, be able to put any kind of a vase that you wanted, a beautiful colored vase, if there was a color that you were really being pulled towards, or a copper bowl, but something holding water so that you're bringing in that element, that juicy, wonderful, fluid movement, which is so much about the divine feminine. Bhumi or Prithvi, which means earth. Rocks, you're on a hike and you pick up a beautiful rock while you're hiking, bring back the rock if you want to put that onto your altar for a few weeks or a month, and then return it back from where it came from. Return it back to Pachamama. Or crystals, beautiful way of incorporating some of Earth's beauty that the earth produces for us to enjoy, and also has an energetic effect. Tejas, which is fire, a lamp, candles, incense, those all represent the fire element. And Akash, which is space. It's the unseen, what's in between things that we don't, the spaces between that we don't, are not actually concrete, the unseen. It's always present. On my altar, I have a space that's for Akash, for space. It's an open space. So I don't cover my whole altar. I leave space for it to be space. Because spaciousness is the word we use constantly. On how are we creating spaciousness inside our body when we stretch and we move and we pull? How are we creating spaciousness in our communication, in our relationships, in the rooms around us? How are we giving ourselves the place to heal, which is the place of spaciousness? So having some akash, some space on your altar is your intention to hold spaciousness as part of your journey. You also might want to have any animal totems that you have, spirit guides, pictures, little, little figurines, or anything that tethers you and reminds you of all of the support you have in the many different dimensions and realms that are around us, whether it's outside, inside, something happening inside of our body, it's a relationship, it's a grandmother who has passed, anything that is connective tissue between you and the world of spirit, the world that you're journeying in a lot of the time. So we want to have that be easy for us to see. So when we take a look at our altar, we're reminded of how much support we have. And we're reminded of all the ways that we're interconnected and we're interdependent upon one another. And take time every day to come to your altar and assess it. Where am I now? Keeping a small plate on your altar where you write little notes to yourself about, this is an intention, or I'm concerned about this person, a prayer for someone, that you write something and you intentionally leave it on your altar. And you might leave it for a day or a week or a month or a year, but you will have movement because this is a living entity. An altar is not for decoration. It's living, it's with you. It has a life to it. So when you come into your space, you want to adapt it to what's coming up for you. Use it as a place to sit in front of, to sit with, and offer your prayers of concern, your prayers of worry, your prayers of gratitude, your meditation. You can even do your yoga in front of it if you have the space to do that. And then I'm going to ask anyone who does set up an altar in whatever spaces, indoor, outdoor, office, home, take a picture and send it to Siddhi and me. And we're going to put a little collage together of altars so that we can share with one another how it is that we're living into these spaces. Because if we don't create consecrated sacred spaces around us, so that we're at least in those spaces, in the places that we have control over. If everybody does that, then we're going to change how we operate and move and transition through the world. And if we don't take responsibility, how can we expect other people to? And when other people come into your space and they see your altar, they'll be interested to ask you, what is this and why do you have this? And many people don't think of an altar beyond a religious use. But an altar has so much of our spirit journey, not in a tradition or a religion, but just in the movement that we have. So you'll find that people will be interested and they'll want to know, and they might want to sit next to it with you. So give yourself an opportunity to create in your life the space that you want to live in, and take responsibility for that, because that is another way of us engaging with the spirit journey and showing ourselves and spirit that we are committed. We're committed to having our surroundings. We're committed to our body as a temple, that we see life as a series of consecrated spaces, and that we're respectful of that. This is the way we want to walk on this planet, because that attention and that commitment overflows from just being in your space. It goes into how we walk the world, how we get out into nature, how we treat other people. It becomes a ripple that goes on and on and on. And we want to bump into other people's ripples that are doing the same thing, because that'll change the world that we're living in. So let's start with just creating our own really yummy altar and sharing.
Nirmala, before you end, can you speak a little bit to directions for altars? Is there anything people need to take into consideration?
There's a lot, and I'll put it in our email. There are a lot of beliefs that you want to put certain things in certain directions, but I don't get so worked up about that, because I have found that sometimes the places I want to have my altar don't line up well with that, and then it frustrates me. But I will add that too, because there are some very strong beliefs that certain directions have a bigger pull, particularly with the elements, with the 5 elements. So I'll add that in our email, so that if you interested, on your iPhone, you can get the your compass.
Compass.
You can tell.
Your altar compass.
Exactly. But do take time, ladies. It can be this big, or it can be this big. And City has a beautiful altar, and she changes it all the time. So let's do it.
Okay. So let's be coming back to our altar. And for this specific moon, the sound actually Aum was always recommended. So I would just want to use our own sound system to stimulate the space below our belly button with the our respiratory system with the ooh, and our brain with the M. Yeah, so I want you to follow the sound all the way into your head, from below to above. And we will do 12 repetitions. Close your eyes, please. Inhale. Ah. Ah. Bring our hands into prayer pose. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Enjoy the time creating your altar or your altars. Have a beautiful week.
Blessings.
Blessings.